Hello, and welcome to Formula One Fans of America. This is episode 12, episode 13. I'll sort the numbers out afterwards. We're recording this now. So we're not live as we usually have been. We're going to switch to a little bit different format, and we'll end up broadcasting it live at a more amiable time for our audience. But yeah, lots to talk about this week. This was my favorite race of the year. I think this is the third time I've said that. I said it about Canada, and I think I said it about Spa, but this by far was my favorite race because of just the wild unpredictability and how things played out. We'll jump right into we were right, we were wrong. I could not have been
one big right. I'm finally agreeing with Greg. They need to put fucking sprinklers on the goddamn tracks. That is enough. Like, all said, all done. Greg is the fucking king. He is right amongst right now.
That was our criticism of like Monaco, like in a way to make it more interesting and more like less of just a DRS train and like where you qualify is where you end up. But yeah, increase it. So I had Max P1, right about that. Jay was right. Rain Max P1. Meg Max P1. Greg wrong.
Whoa!
Max
I was partially right. Max was up there.
Yep, he was. Got Max.
You had him third.
Well, no, I don't call. You notice there's no numbers there. I don't call who's going to be first, second, or third. Here's the chunk. I know but I had some flavor to my call outs of who's going to be what where.
I like how that's not fair. You have to list who's 1, 2, and 3. You can't just generalize a podium.
Nah, I'm going to add in some things like Jay did. Jay said, if it rains, Max goes to first. And I'm going to agree there.
Max was first regardless, I think.
You said if it
rain, Max won, so.
Oh, no rain, Max, Leclerc, and Oscar.
So, pretty good rights. I cannot believe Lance Stroll. I was right about that too.
That was beautiful.
What in the world? And part of me feels like some level of empathy because I was like, man, that could have happened.
There is no empathy. No, fuck that. There is no empathy. How do you finish behind a car that never touched the racetrack before the race even starts?
Skills. He is very skilled at fucking shit up.
Okay, let me say something not in his defense. Let's just highlight something. So there were some cars that were very difficult to drive, and I saw a split between some of the teammates. Right,
Alonso had his issues too in that car.
Yes.
Yeah, but Stroll has actually been very good in the rain traditionally. Like that's the one time where we're like, oh, you know what? The kid can actually drive if he pays attention, and it has been highlighted in the rain before. Which is something we lift a lot of other people up to and say, well, they're awesome in the rain, so their car just sucks in the dry.
No, okay, but no, fine.
Yep.
Fine.
Nope.
You can get away with that for the rear lockup. But to drive through a fucking gravel pit at 2 miles an hour?
I got nothing for that.
So here's what I want to know.
For Daddy to come rescue him?
Here's what I want to know. Does the FIA actually test for weed?
Yeah,
they must.
To. They have to.
I don't.
If they're looking
I
for
don't
fucking
think so.
Benadryl,
I don't know, and I don't think so. I don't know.
There's
and
no
I
IQ test.
That's fair.
We'll dig into this. He could always get away because he said, "I don't know how to read," and I just do what people tell me to.
No, he doesn't. They tell him to drive like a normal human being, and he can't even fucking do that.
No, they actually do not tell him to drive like a normal fucking human being. They really do not. And I really think this is why they've brought in everybody that they have that's been a world champion, because they're trying to fucking learn through osmosis with this child. I really think so. And it's just not fucking working.
Let's talk about the track greaser. Oh, go ahead, Fabian.
I have an answer to the question. The FIA's drug testing policy, which Max was a victim of a couple of races ago because he got door knocked on at 4:30 in the morning, if you remember, after a long night of sim racing, does align with the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA regulations, which prohibits the use of substances, including cannabis, during competition.
mean,
since the question came
driving a car over 200 miles an hour, you probably don't want to be a little slowing your
I'm
reaction.
just trying to figure out what the fuck this kid's on at this point. Like,
I think he's
salvia, maybe.
No, he's just dumb.
Should he be on something?
That is the
He did really well with painkillers back in fucking last year. Put him back on him. Let's see what he can do.
Facts.
Let's give him some
Do you
amphetamines.
think maybe
Let him
he's
concentrate.
ADHD? That's what I was just getting ready to say. Do you think
I
he's
think he very much
ADHD
is. Could
and they
benefit
won't
from
let
some
him take his
amphetamine.
medicine?
But
Yeah.
I feel like ADHD should help you because your brain is going like a mile a minute. So when you're on a track going a mile a minute,
No, it's mentally
Not at
exhausting.
all.
Forcing yourself to focus and concentrate, even for like an hour.
no, I have it
is-
too,
is
but my brain
extremely
just is like,
exhausting.
Okay, so
you can do certain things to like get yourself into a flow state, and you like, especially when you're driving. So racing is one of those things for people with ADHD where you get focused and dialed in, but it's quite clear and obvious that he cannot maintain it. I've never had a wreck while I was racing a motorcycle or a car. And it's because like it captures my attention completely, and like that's it. Like
We're gonna have to
normal
edit
car
this
driving and
part
motorcycle
out.
riding, I get into accidents. We were discussing Lance Stroll and some of the difficulties that he faces. It did not seem to just be him for once, if I can say that. Like, he wasn't the only one struggling in an Aston Martin this weekend. But I do want to talk about like two things. One, we discussed last week, like how ridiculous it was to do a sprint race with only one practice session. And especially like for then, it was the most important because it was coming off a break, so many upgrades. Still, people were introducing upgrades and adjusting and getting used to them after this week. So we're, in the middle of this or the end of this 3-week stretch. The track was resurfaced too. Like, are we trying to hurt people? Is the logic in the sense here just devoid completely? I don't understand this. And I don't think it was bad in the dry, right? So it almost came off like, okay, this is okay. But when it got wet, we watched what happened with everybody. And I don't know if it's necessarily just the car either. So I think Stroll might get a little bit of a pass this week.
I think the FIA is orchestrating all of this shit to make the races more interesting.
No, because then they don't listen to Greg and put sprinklers.
When we save it for the segment of Conspiracy Corner, we'll get there. We'll get there. But I do think that this, like, and I don't think it's deliberate, but let's face it, like 5 drivers didn't finish the race. That's not supposed to happen, right?
And more to the point, some drivers didn't start the race because they didn't have enough time, and that's a ding on sponsorship dollars and marketing time on TV. So like, there are other important considerations that would say, hey, we shouldn't push this agenda of compiling everything into these sprint weekends and whatnot.
Jay, go ahead and jump in real quick because I saw you shaking your head. What do you have?
So I will say this with the Williams is the only one that did not get completed. And there was definitely 2 teams that lost both cars in order to be rebuilt.
It was bad wreck, though.
Yeah. Albon binned the fuck out of that car. Like that was Checo level Monaco binned.
Yeah. It's the difference between like replacing some wings and suspension components versus like replacing the whole back half of the car. Like, you just can't turn that around that fast. And that team is real short on parts. Because Albon's been
chassis, dude,
throwing cars away.
He's paying tribute to Sargent every weekend.
Leave that poor boy alone.
Hey, stop. No, because Albon had crashed more cars and cost more money to Williams than Sargent did. And that's why it didn't make much sense. Albon honestly should be losing his seat soon because he's not doing what he needs to do for that team. And
no, the only reason why he's still there is because he's British.
No, he's not.
Albon's Thai.
He's Thai and British. He's half and
British.
half.
Yeah.
He's
right.
Half and half, but like they call him the Thai driver. They specifically focus on his Thai heritage.
Who's that?
Like,
well, yes, when they're marketing, they talk about
media,
when they're marketing, they focus on his
and
Thai heritage, but when it comes to anything else, they focus on his British heritage.
They literally verbatim called him the Thai driver after he crashed.
Who's they?
Are you guys ready?
The commentators from
Do it.
Formula One
Right.
Media.
Lay it on
Right.
us.
Right, not the news
Watch
people.
Did you know
The
I'm
people
looking up
commentating on the
deconstru-
race call him the tie driver.
Yes,
That's
Yes,
why.
I'm
yes,
saying,
right.
yes.
Not the
Yeah.
news, the British
Yeah.
news that we're going to get to later.
Yes, thank you. That's what I'm saying.
So
Thank
after
you,
the
Greg.
Mexico Grand Prix, they did the Deconstructors Championship again. They haven't updated it for Brazil yet because there's a lot of work that goes into this one.
The
Perez,
Deconstructors Championship
4.8
is hilarious.
million in damages. Albon 3.7, Russell 3.2, Sargent 3.0. Now this one's interesting. I gotta scroll way down for this one. Pierre Gasly, fucking goose egg. No money spent.
What about after Monaco?
Also, no results.
He
So, I mean,
didn't
if you're not
wreck in
trying
Monaco.
hard enough, you don't wreck
No,
any
but
cars.
he
So,
get his car damaged in Monaco.
it wasn't his
Oh,
fault.
Albon did that.
That was,
But
that
it
was my
wasn't.
boy's
Yeah, it
fault.
wasn't due to him. Yeah. Let's talk about
Besides
Alpine though right now and just how
Oh.
incredible their performance was. They rocketed themselves up from
Fucking
what, like
crazy.
9th to 6th.
Yeah.
I think they scored 36 points this weekend. Do you
Yeah,
know that
it's like
they
a
were the
$30
highest
million payday.
scoring team? The highest
Yeah.
scoring points team. Max won the race, and Alpine still, thanks Checo, Alpine still outscored them
Yeah.
over the
Yep.
weekend between the sprint and the GP. And
Yep.
man, amazing that you can go from,
Like-
I think, what was it, 9th to 6th?
I get it that
Insane.
Max passed Ocon. That makes sense. Max had that awesome pass down the inside. He was putting on everybody. I expected more cars to come up and go past the Alpines. And somehow, some way, they were like, well, we'll just throw a whole bunch of downforce at the car. And we have two drivers who are actually pretty capable. So, yeah, I guess power doesn't matter in this race. And everybody was like just too busy wrecking in the back. And Alpine was like, thanks, we'll take the payday, $30 million of a jump later.
Man,
So,
I love
can-
it because it feeds into that any given Sunday mentality and sort of what we've talked about in the past of like, no, if a driver's locked in, if any one of these 20 guys is truly dialed in, and it just happened to turn out that they were both on the same team, and well, a quarter of the field isn't going to finish, but both of these guys, and as much as I hate that fair-faced
Say
person,
Fuckwagon.
fuckhead,
it.
as much as I dislike him, I have to eat my words from last week and say, like, no, he drove the hell out of that car, and him and Gasly both. Like, it's what makes this one of the probably the most exciting seasons since 2012. Like, I like this season better than 2021. We truly don't know now who's going to win the constructors. We have like a tight three-way battle, and this is fun. This is what makes it worth watching. And it's no longer, the Mercedes show or the Red Bull show. This is great racing, especially when Alpine can just have one solid weekend all season long. I think they had 13 or 14 points before this weekend. And I think they scored 36 this weekend.
This highlights, though, a problem, right? You have a bunch of teams at the top that are taking up all of the points, right? They're winning all the points because they're so far ahead in the development race. So now you've got a midfield team that has a phenomenal weekend, and they jump ahead of everybody else that's been picking away with them, really looking for scraps.
Yep.
So this is the financial disparagence in Formula One being shown right there in the points. Hopefully, as the budget constraints and or structure, however you want to call it, continues on, this flattens out, and you get more teams that are able to compete across a broader spectrum of weekends as the years go on. But it's going to take a while.
So the cost cap is going back up.
Mm-hmm.
They're raising it, I want to say 10 million or 15 million this year alone.
Williams says thank you.
Yeah, because they really did not account for inflation or actual costs of energy and everything else that they put into the cost cap, which
or Albon.
or catering,
or Red Bull's catering.
But no, this is what I have said all along, is that you will see who the best drivers are whenever you take away toys. I now cannot wait for 2026 to get DRS the fuck out of there, because we saw what the McLarens did without DRS. Absolutely fuck all. The Ferrari, Charles Leclerc held back fucking Lando and Russell for a while, didn't he? I think he held back Russell for a while. And Max
He did a very good job of defending. Yeah.
And Max even commented the only one that was hard to pass was Charles. That's it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he also commented Charles so many mistakes towards the very
No,
end.
that was during the sprint. That was during the sprint. That was
the sprint. Yes,
race.
when he was trying to push up to the McLarens. I thought that's what we were talking about. Sorry.
No, I'm talking about during the race. Whenever Max was making the charge to the field, he said, "My only real problem was getting past Charles."
Let's codify this though
for today. Can we talk about Max's starting position at the
grid?
Wait,
can we talk about Jay's thing first? Because I got something to tie into that. We're going to get rid of DRS, but we're going to add in a little more push to pass, right? So we're going to trade one toy for another. And the other thing is we were looking at a DRS good example of not having it in the rain, which we never had it in the rain anyway. So I don't know.
When are some
I want to see
memorable
2026 too.
drives?
Yeah, I know, but I don't think it has to do with the DRS. I think it has to do with the rain, right? It equalizes, it takes the power comp thing out of the way. It takes out people who have really good cars. Max is in a different field. He's got a decent car in the rain, and he's a great driver. So, like, he's an aberration. But everybody else you saw was, like, all shaken up. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see 2026, too. I'm happy for whatever changes. Let's just keep shaking the pot up and see what good comes out of it in the future.
Right. But Gasly holding off fucking Russell for over 30 fucking laps. 30 fucking laps. Fabian, you're muted again. Fabian,
Still muted. Always muted. Can't hear anything.
Let's not gloss over Alpine too quickly, because first of all, qualifying, right? They did very decently in qualifying. The strategy was great. You know, they had effective tire management. Their pit stops were okay. They capitalized on people's mistakes. Like they had a chance to put on display shit that they've been learning back there, right? And it really showed up. And then the car, you know, the car itself was good, but and then the constructors championship aspect with the points that they had such a successful outing across the entire fucking board that was really just shocking to see. Like, in fact, my wife walked in because she had stepped away for a moment, and she was like, what's the candy bar team? You know, she's like, they look like a candy bar. I'm like, oh, you haven't seen them before, babe, because they're always back there, you know? And she got locked in on watching those two cars during that race and was really like interested in what was playing out there. Again, and this is a novice, you know, person that's watched 4 races the entire season, really, and just picking up on the subtle, you know, nuances of what's really going on track, especially with the conditions making it that much more watchable and exciting. Man, Alpine, they should still be celebrating today. They killed it.
Oh, they are. I guarantee they are.
Absolutely.
Probably for the next 2 fucking weeks too.
You know who else is celebrating? Haas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They did good. I mean, it was well,
I'm saying because they signed Ocon.
Yeah. No matter what Rich wants to say. But no, regardless, like if you look at this just from a sheer driving perspective, the 2 Alpine drivers were punching 50 fucking levels above what they should have been.
Absolutely.
Because everybody, including Rich, likes to bash on Ocon. Ocon is still a Grand Prix winner. Like at the end of the day, he is still a Grand Prix winner. Gasly.
This was his 4th podium?
I don't remember. I couldn't even tell.
Third or 4th podium for him.
It's his 4th podium.
I'll caveat it and say, like, as much shit as I talk, Esteban Ocon would outdrive me any day. Even if I grew up next to him karting, like he'd pummel me. Like he's a better driver than I'll ever hope to possibly be. Nothing but respect for him as a Formula 1 driver. He's a very good driver.
As a human, he sucks.
Yeah, he's
regardless
that face.
I mean, why is
every single teammate that he has fucking hate him?
Because he races them.
So here's the thing: they all hate him on the track. They don't.
He hasn't hit them that often.
The track.
If you have to put that often caveat in there, it's still not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But regardless, they both punched well above their fucking levels and proved that those two absolutely deserve to be there. Neither one deserves to be in a midfield team. Like at this point, I think it was too early for Gasly to be brought to the Red Bull seat. And I've said that for fucking ever. But like realistically at this point, if I was one of the bigger teams, I would be second guessing my choices right now. Because you have what? Lando Norris and Oscar. Oscar did okay. That boy ain't got no situational awareness though if Max is around. None.
So do you I gotta ask you a question. Do you think RB or Red Bull would maybe show some interest to Gasly again?
Gasly will not go back.
A la Ricciardo. You don't think so?
Gasly will not go back to Red Bull. Period.
You don't think that if they offered him Checo's seat, he wouldn't take it?
No.
Well, like more
there
money,
is so much pressure.
He's in a better car.
The Red Bull seat is arguably the most pressure seat in F1.
He can finally handle it, though. He couldn't when he was a kid, but he finally can now.
He's going to end up being on a second.
Still going against Max.
Yeah, he's going to be a second driver forever.
Yes, you are still going against Max at the end of the day. You are going to be compared to your teammate at the end of the day. If you're getting compared to Verstappen, guess what? It's not.
So what's the alternative, or what's the solution then? If not that, would you stay on this fledgling team in Alpine?
Mercedes.
Where else is he going to go?
Mercedes is going to have an open seat
show interest in him.
Yes, I really do. I do not think Russell is their long haul. I really do not at this point.
How come?
Because how much damage he does to the cars.
Well, they're also grooming Kimi.
They're grooming Kimi to take over the team.
Week.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like we said last week. They're going to use George Russell as that intermediary driver so they can start pushing all the media behind Kimi.
Exactly. And then they're going to drop George. George is going to get dropped. They're either going to go to 26 and keep him for a year. They'll start going year-to-year contracts just like they did with Bottas. Or they're just going to drop him outright and go for someone else. So that's one.
Do you think Russell would take the number 2 Red Bull seat? Do you think that would be a landing place for him then? Where else is he going to go, man? Ferrari after Lewis retires?
Yes.
Or a lower team?
No, I think he'll go to Ferrari after Lewis retires.
That's what I think too. Yeah.
But
it would make the most sense. And I get what you're saying, and I'm on board with what you're saying. Before, I'm like, I don't know, man. Mercedes, because of my point from last episode, they need a face of the brand, right? And he has been, and he was supposed to be the successor to Lewis.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's not.
I think he's got what it takes to be Ferrari's number 2 driver, not their necessarily lead driver. And I think that's where he wants to stay in one of those top 3 teams in one of the top 3 cars. So it's going to be Mercedes, Ferrari, or McLaren. And that's the only other team that he could really land with.
Oscar's not going to stay at McLaren like past next year. I do not see it happening because they're going to prioritize Lando again next year. If they do not let those two just race till the end of the year now, because let's be real here, and I'm sorry, Meg.
No, you say
Lando's done. Lando's done.
That was sad.
He does not have the ability to be a champion, I don't think. And if he did not have the car under him that he has had this year, we would not even be talking about him in a championship fight at all. Oscar has it. He will be a champion at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But Lando will stay Zach Brown's golden boy. And fucking Oscar will walk away.
Can we say some positive things about George Russell this week? Because he had a pretty good weekend.
Oh, he held the fuck out of the McLaren.
He held it for 30 laps, right?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah. I thought Lewis was going to do a lot better. Unfortunately, the rain kind of mitigated that. That qualifying session was wild. And again, it was
Mitigated
rescheduled
Lewis.
because of water. I think, yeah,
Lewis
he didn't get a good lap.
How far back? No. In the race, Lewis came from how far back?
Not in the race. I'm saying in qualifying. I'm talking about qualifying.
I don't give
because
a
it
fuck
had to be
about
rescheduled
qualifying at this point.
Well, it mattered if he goes out in fucking Q3, right? When this is a track that he knows that he wins on.
The points.
He did come back and get into the points. Good. Max also came back from very far and got into the points and had an incredible weekend. I'm not disputing
Max
either of those
bend
things.
over, bitches.
I expected Lewis to be qualifying alongside George. Because of the rain and the weather and the way that had to be rescheduled, it didn't work out that way. Yeah, I think the rain threw a wrench into a lot of people's gears. I think specifically in Aston Martin's, and that car was unbalanced between the front and the rear. And that was why, like, you saw Stroll just like get a little bit on the brakes and it just slung out underneath him. Alonso had the same issues.
I was gonna say that could also been some regen stuff. Like those cars, you see this even in the dry, if they're regenning too much from the rear, and they'll be constantly adjusting how much regen they can take under braking. And that is one of the limitations of just the technology, right? It's only regenning through the rear wheels. So he touches the white, and a lot of people touched the white lines and paid the price for it. It might have been a really simple mistake that the team just had no data. Like they were just like, screw it. We don't know what this tire is going to do in this condition. So here you go, try this. And he goes out there on lap 1 and bends the thing.
It was just not the weekend I expected, like going into it with Lewis. He did get to do the lap and send his car. There's a special bond between like Lewis and Brazil, I think. And I expected a much better performance out of him, and like didn't expect him going out in Q3, right? And so I do care about qualifying for these reasons when one of the greatest drivers of all time goes out in Q3. Okay, so that's why it's relevant. It's why we're talking about it. I expected it to be closer up to Russell. I expected AMG to have a better weekend than they did. But yeah, Lewis struggled, unfortunately, in the wet this weekend. Like,
I would say both cars in the points are pretty good. But if you want to stick with qualifying, 51 motherfucking seconds. I do not give a flying fuck if he was still trying to move that car or not. Those barriers were damaged enough that they took 15 minutes to repair. As soon as that happened, there should have been a fucking red flag. Any other race that you've ever watched, if there's damage to those barriers from a car impacting, that's over. They're throwing up a flag, either yellow, safety car, whatever. During qualifying, obviously they can't safety car.
How many yellow and red flags got thrown? Do you think if maybe there was something like in that of like the consideration of time, and it's like, fuck, if we throw another red flag, like, are we even going to be able to finish this goddamn thing? And then there's rain still coming. I get what you're saying, but I think that if I could try to explain the mindset for somebody else other than you, like it would be like, man, how many times are we going to have to virtual safety car, yellow flag, and red flag the track? So I don't think
you shouldn't have ran the fucking qualifying.
It was rescheduled, right?
That. Right.
Like it got rescheduled because of the weather, the rain, the time, the whole weekend. Yeah, it's a shit show of weather, man. You have to work through it and work around it.
And at that point,
I don't think it was deliberate. I think it was trying to work with the weather. Or cancel the GP. Like, were you going to cancel the GP?
Yeah, they did it to Imola last year. What's your point?
And they hate doing it because it costs
I don't give a fuck.
Massive amounts of money.
Literally lives at danger at that point. A lot of fucking lives. I don't
disagree with you when it comes to safety ever. I agree with you.
Just like just like during the sprint race. Oh, hey, look. So fucking Hulkenberg's walking down the side of the track. It's still going to be a virtual safety car or a fucking virtual safety car instead of an actual
which
safety
should never
car.
happen. Yeah.
So one of the big differences
is the McLarens pass each other quick throughout the safety car.
From track to track, the course workers are usually local. Not always, but sometimes they're local.
Right.
An odd exception would be Monaco. Like from the SCCA here in the United States, you can volunteer to go be a corner worker at Monaco, which would be dope. I probably should have done that years ago. But so sometimes there are differences in how they do their thing, right? Like how quickly they do this. Their procedures should all be the same, but they're usually a separate organization of people, volunteers, and paid individuals for the track. So there's going to be some disparagements between how quickly they do one thing versus the other. Plus, who the heck knows what was going on up in the stewards, well, not stewards, but in race control's office when those flags should have been thrown, or whether they were getting reports from the field like, yeah, everything's fine. Meanwhile, there's like, the disaster.
51 seconds though. 51. You can see the fucking damage to the barriers at that point. Because I watched it
way into Jay's conspiracy corner. You and Meg talk about this. I know you. No, you're good. You're good. We're on topic. Like segue straight into our regular segment of Jay's conspiracy corner. Meg, I know you have some contributions, but I think we're digging at that dirt right now. So let's go.
So is it really a conspiracy if it actually happened? Just saying.
I think it's conspiracy if it was purposely handled the way it was.
If you're going to say we're not throwing out the safety car until like Lando passes Oscar, and then
it wasn't even like 3 seconds later.
No.
Like literally, it was like
it was a long time
after the McLaren.
They were waving that yellow flag for so long that their goddamn arms got tired before they threw out the red flag.
Hold on, I need to look this one up because I didn't think about this one.
So I think there was a lot of confusion. I think that there's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we don't necessarily like have privy to, like of, hey, how are we going to keep this race going? I don't know if it was deliberate to let Lando do this also, to make the race more interesting or the season more interesting. But
it was also weird for the entirety of the race. It wasn't just like the yellow, like it wasn't just the yellow flag to the red flag. It was even like that the race engineers were relaying information to the drivers before the stewards could relay information to the drivers. Like with the second formation lap that wasn't supposed to happen.
We'll get to that one. Don't worry about that one. Okay.
There's a lot of reasons for that though, right? And like one of the things that Greg points out is like the local stewards that are there, these are volunteers. Like
they're not local stewards. They are not local.
The guys on track,
Johnny Herbert, Sebastian Vettel, they were not local.
I wasn't saying stewards. I was saying
the course workers. The marshals that work on the track.
Yes, that's what I was saying. The marshals on the track, those are local crews. And so it's not like, I mean, you know how difficult it is to establish communications between separate organizations and then go work together. That's why we do military exercises. And most of it is about how we communicate with each other because we're not.
Well, one thing is clear. The local marshals are definitely not very well schooled on regulations because we had a bunch of them helping a guy push his car back onto the track, which wound up getting him disqualified
twice.
Right, so
which is
they were like
exactly
like, hey, we jump started an F1 car, you know.
Yeah, so and no, you're not allowed to do that. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. So like, but these guys are volunteers. I talked to them at the track in Miami. It's how I got good pictures. And my way of getting better pictures was to like ask them, hey man, how do you get this job? Like, I'm very interested in doing this next year. Oh, do you mind if I take some pictures? Yeah. So they are volunteers. You can volunteer to do this. You have to go through training and get certified, but like, yeah, these are local volunteers like working the F1 races of the tracks. It's one of the things about F1 is to create jobs and provide to the local economy. So like you can, I mean, and then I could be an idiot pushing Lance Stroll back onto the grid after he spins out.
You be pushing him back into the wall, motherfucker. Don't lie. Anyways, so back to the conspiracies here.
I'd get him DQ'd.
So back to the conspiracies here. You have the McLaren's Lando passing Oscar. Finally, good on Oscar for that, by the way. You finally have that happen, and like 5 seconds later, a virtual safety car comes out, or not the virtual safety car, the actual safety car comes out. Hulkenberg had already been out of his car and like 50 feet away from it at this point. Whenever this finally happened, why the fuck did they not do like? That car was close enough to the road on a corner that should have been a safety car straight from the rip.
That was in the runoff. It wasn't on the road.
No, it was close to what I'm saying is here's the corner. Hulkenberg's car is right here. Like it was not far off the track.
It was down in the runoff. It wasn't like on the
not
track.
that far. No, I'm not saying it was on the track.
Can we pull up a picture?
Working on it, boss.
And I will just say this counterpoint. It was pouring heavy. Lap times went way down.
Not during the sprint race.
Yeah, no, not during the sprint.
Oh, I thought we were talking about
No, we're talking about we're talking about the whole span of the week and how delayed they were. They were fucking up in the sprint race as well as the Grand Prix.
I was thinking about when Hulkenberg got beached in the race.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. That was his jump start. But we're talking about the delay in the sprint. They didn't.
Regardless,
that's the only way they were consistent all weekend is taking forever.
Okay. There we go.
There we go. Perfecto. So Greg, you were kind of pushing back on it, and I kind of want to push back too, because he's very clearly entirely off the track. He is not.
That's also not where he got beached.
Driving.
We're not talking about during the race, Greg. This is during the sprint race. Big
During
fucking difference.
I'm just gonna mute myself.
There's no rain.
Honestly,
and there's no
the
rain.
difference between the sprint race and between the actual race is where the points difference between Lando and Max came from during that race. Anyways, moving along here. So right there, that is 2 foot off of the track, Rich, coming off of a corner. Somebody comes in.
But if you see the racing line and where the Ferrari is in relation to where he is,
that's after the yellow flag is already flying.
Right. So there's plenty of time to move over.
How many times have you seen a car go off the track that close to the track and not a virtual safety car or a safety car come out?
Very few, if ever.
Thank you. Now, moving along here. So, that part's done. Needless to say, should have been either a fucking red flag, or not red flag, I apologize. It should have been a virtual safety car or a safety car right there. As you can see, plain as day in that, Norris was still behind Piastri. And if I remember correctly, he was about 1.5 seconds behind Piastri at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, it was weird enough that even the freaking interviewer congratulated Oscar first.
Yo, that was brilliant. Yeah. I love that.
That was beautiful.
Can we talk a little bit about the drama there with the team orders with McLaren? Because there was a lot of speculation during that was is this payback for Hungary where Oscar's not getting out of his way? And when are they going to do this? And if it hadn't been a mistake from Charles, I don't know if they would have even switched. Yeah, right. Because Max was creeping up and trying to pass Charles, and they had to tell Oscar. Charles. Well, they had, previously, in the previous laps, as this built up over the last 18 laps of the race. Yes, thank you. And so it was oh wow, is he just pushing it but Oscar's Oscar. He followed team orders when it came over on the radio, and he was told hey, no, let him catch up, let him creep up. But he did, I believe, everything that he needed to do. And I think honestly, his patience and it not doing the team orders to begin with. And this might've been a strategy with McLaren as well of all right, let's wait for the absolute perfect time, which they did. They waited until Max had fought with Charles enough. Oscar slowed down, gave him DRS and let him catch up. And then while the fight was going for third, okay, now I'll pass you. But it was done. He should have done it
right outside of the yellow flag zone, and then Lando passed Oscar as Max was coming into the yellow flag. I'm not disagreeing that there was a beautiful piece of strategy. That was beautiful strategy. My problem is the timing of the fucking virtual safety car. That is my biggest issue, because literally Lando passes Oscar, automatically virtual safety car.
But there was a big delay between when he actually spun off track to the safety car. So it's not about McLaren's teamwork, but just possible FIA interference.
So moving along, qualifying. You have Lando come through, get his fucking lap. At this point, Albon spins. Not Albon. Sorry, I apologize. Sainz spins, bins it, or Stroll. Fuck, there was too many of these motherfuckers that went off the goddamn road that day. Anyways, Sainz fucking Stroll bins it into the fucking barriers, breaks the barriers. Greg, how many times have you seen barriers actually get broken, even if a car is still moving, that they do not call red flag immediately?
Ooh. They always call red flag.
Thank you. Every other red flag was between 5 and 10 seconds of it fucking happening. To include fucking Fernando's, which I think Fernando just fucked up his front end, did he? I can't remember. But regardless, he hit the barriers. Colapinto hit the barriers. Actually, it was Colapinto. I apologize.
Yeah, it was Colapinto who bent his car.
No, that was Albon that bent his car. Colapinto just bent his wing and might have cracked something on the suspension on the front.
Wait, for Colapinto's crash?
Yes. Albon was the one that looked
the whole back of his car was fucked.
We're not talking about during a race. We're talking about qualifying right now.
Okay.
So Colapinto damaged front wing, front suspension. But they still called a red flag almost immediately because there was damage to the barriers. Sainz went off next, I believe. Or was Sainz the last one? Fuck it. I don't care anymore. But regardless, all of them had their red flags almost fucking immediately. The second that Max went down to 11th and was coming up the hill to fucking get his lap in is whenever they called red flag. Was that right there, which was 51 seconds after the fact. I don't give a shit if room temperature IQ was sitting there doing donuts off the side. There was damage to the barriers. Numerous people had hit the fucking barriers there. That causes a safety issue, which is the whole reason why the FIA is there, is to protect the safety and sanctity of the sport. And they did neither on that one. Now, during the race was the fun one because they actually barely fucked anything up. And I'm very surprised by this. I cannot blame the FIA at all for the race, which is incredible because I fucking hate them.
I do believe it's not necessarily entirely his fault this weekend.
It was the formation fucking lap. They're doing
I understand, but it was slow, cold tires, full wets, which are not performant tires, right? We can segue into the performant tires.
If it was Ocon that would have done it, what would you be saying right now?
Ferret face, French
scathingly critical of
okay. Anyways, so room temperature IQ bins it somehow during the formation lap. I've not seen anything funnier since Charles Leclerc went out last year during a formation lap. So we have that.
So it happens to some of the greats, right? It happens to some of the greatest drivers on the grid.
I still fucking made the same amount of fun of Charles Leclerc as I did. And Charles Leclerc's was not even his fucking fault. It was the goddamn Ferrari's fault. It was.
I believe that's what we're discussing here. I believe that this was the Aston's fault.
Hydraulic issue. That was a hydraulic
there was an issue
failure
with the balance of Aston Martin this weekend. I'm giving personally, as much as I love to talk shit about Lance Stroll, as much as I do, and I do, I don't believe that this was necessarily his fault. I think there was multiple factors. Maybe he could have been more considerate of the tire temperature, right? And then also understood that through qualifying, he spun out and had an imbalance in the front and rear wing of the car. That was pretty apparent during the sprint and the qualifying the entire weekend.
Okay,
so he probably could have compensated for that instead of spinning out into the formation lap. Maybe he could have done that better. Okay. But I do think the car is imbalanced.
Possible issues with the car. Who decides to drive through fucking gravel?
What she said. Anyways.
He did two dumb things. So we're going to take
enough.
one of them away, which may or may not have been his fault. Instead of just backing it up a little bit more, he decided to drive through a fucking beach.
Pretty much. And,
it
drop
went
dead
past
Fred
his
over there.
Boots when he stood in it.
The worst part about that too is that the way the plank is positioned on the car, it basically is like a bulldozer, right? It just digs in and just burrows you down.
It just displaces all of the fucking gravel, and he just digs himself in, and he's like, "I'm gonna do this going 2 miles an hour."
Yeah, you gotta plow through it or don't do it.
Anyways, we'll get past Lance Stroll and his drop dead Fred imaginary friend that told him to go do that. Fucking during the how many motherfucking times have we seen somebody penalized, like hardcore penalized for starting grid fucking infractions? How many times? Ocon had like 35 fucking seconds. Fernando had like 25. Checo got what 10 last weekend for it. Like,
you're talking about the false start on the formation lap, correct?
Yes.
From Lando. Yeah.
Not just Lando.
It was like
this is where it hurts
the entire grid followed him.
No, it was not the entire grid.
No, it was Yuki,
Lawson, Russell, and fucking Lando were the only ones to move before the FIA came or race control came down and said, "Go."
Yeah, but
not
then
Ocon.
it becomes a safety issue.
Ocon didn't go.
Bottas didn't go. Max didn't go until their teams actually told them to, and their fucking dashes.
They fucking had their cars died because they waited so long.
No, they killed the cars.
Oh, they killed
That's
the
what
cars?
you're supposed to do because there's supposed to be a 10-minute window where the teams come back out and set back up the cars.
Somebody's did.
Max, because it was a
Bottas.
he was gonna because Max was having issues starting it too.
Okay, yeah, because I
mean, they thought it was because of the wash.
Crazy hot.
Yeah, they thought it was because of the wash. But Max killed his car, and he said so, or somebody said so after the race, that this is exactly what you were supposed to do whenever this happens.
Yeah,
is you are supposed to kill the car, and your team is supposed to come back out, set it back up on the fucking jacks, put the tire blankets back on, and chill for 10 minutes. Because they have to get the temperatures back down. They have to make sure the fuel levels weren't affected, everything like that. Like, there is legitimate shit that goes into this.
Yeah, there's a shit ton
the
of
verbatim
startup
quote
procedures.
was like, hey, he was supposed to wait for the green light. There was no green light. And oh, I guess we're all supposed to go now? Like, what's going on? And
that's why they ran.
We're investigating is multiple infractions. Yeah.
So you're saying like the procedures are supposed to be if you have that, start and you have to pretty much forego the formation lap, you're supposed to automatically have that 10-minute window built in for everyone to come out, reset the cars and reset the start. But then there was like they were saying too during the race, it was like communication issues. So it was like the race engineers talked to the team and said that they were going to do another formation lap before there were any green lights. So did they just completely forego those procedures like the FIA?
Lando did. Yeah. No. FIA said we're going to do another formation lap. Lando took that as, oh, we're supposed to do it now, instead of the proper procedure.
No, but they were saying that he received information from the race engineers before.
Then his race engineers are fucking stupid and screwed.
Yeah, well, but that's what they were saying, that it's not just an issue with the driver. There's so much communication going on between the stewards, the race engineers, and the driver. So what they were saying during the race was that information was relayed before the lights were. And so the race engineer said they're going to do a second formation lap. So he just took off and went.
Right. But the second formation lap has a procedure to it.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
And that's what Lando skipped.
Yeah.
So there's where that is. Now, I will say this right now. The four that moved, Lawson, Yuki, Lando, and Russell, none of them have really had to deal with this. So it's an understandable thing. I get it. It happens. But at the end of the day, if it would have been Fernando, if it would have been Lewis, if it would have been Max, if it would have been fucking probably Gasly probably would have been fucked, and same with Ocon. But any of the other drivers would have been hit with either a drive-through penalty or a stop-and-go penalty. They would not have waited. What's that?
Nothing. Go ahead. Continue.
They would not have waited until after the race to deal with this. Come on, let's get the fuel.
Throw the fuel on the fire.
Come on, this is fine.
Oh, it's good. I love hearing all the whining and bullshit.
I'm not even doing this about fucking Red Bull. I could give a shit less. My favorite driver is on the fucking penalty box for this shit. Literally, I'm saying they need to do something about this. If you are going to punish shit, punish it. There is no fucking... What did we say last week?
You weren't saying that.
There's no unilateral decisions coming across.
You weren't
There's no consistency.
singing the punish it song throughout the entire season when your boy was crash stapping himself all over the fucking place. Where was that?
I said Max is a great driver. Yuki is my favorite fucking driver, and I've said that since our first fucking podcast, Rich. Like, literally.
Fair enough.
You got this weird obsession, like, that I actually think that Max is my favorite driver. It's kind of funny. But regardless, those four, what do they have in common? There was two Brits. Anyways, moving along here.
Brits can't get no love, man.
Fuck the British right now. Anyways,
can we move along? Let's move along into tech talk, and let's talk about these wet tires and the performance aspect of these wet tires, because this was not a good weekend. I don't think that, like, anytime a quarter of the field doesn't finish, there's something wrong. It kind of harkens back towards what I was saying. Maybe the resurfacing of the track combined with the wet conditions is what led to, like, the disastrous weekend we had. And I think that's where, like, we get a little bit of a we were right. Like, also the bumpiness of this track. And I'll address the Alonso thing after Greg speaks. But, like, this was not a good track. This was not a good race. I think that the reason why we saw the, like, completely unpredictable results we did is because of this track resurfacing combined with the wet. But Greg, I want you to jump in here and start talking about the full wet tire performance.
Yeah, so we only saw it on a few cars, and it didn't work out that great, partly because they stopped the race, but also partly because of spray, right? So we're going to talk about how impossible it is to get rid of spray. And at first, let's just highlight the difference between these two tires, right? So y'all can see it on screen. The intermediate, as we all know, the teams love it because it eventually becomes a slick. So you can start out in the rain and you can just leave it on there, and as things start to dry out, and you have some flexibility with when you go over to the full slick tire, right? The full wet, on the other hand, the one on the right with the blue stripe, and forgive me, these are the old wheels, the smaller size diameters, but I couldn't find one with a good picture that was big enough with the new wheels. Same concept though. The full wet
tread pattern is what's most important here. Thank you.
Yeah, the tread pattern is phenomenal at pumping water up off the track, right? So they're not hydroplaning nearly as much. They can deal with much more standing water. This tire is only 10 millimeters taller than the intermediate. It looks bigger just because of how they have them pictured in this particular shot. But that 10 millimeters is key because it gets the plank up off the ground, and that keeps it from doing the whole, like, bulldozer effect with water. With water, doesn't compress or move very quickly. So it's vital to do that. Now, I want to bring up something interesting. We talked about a couple weeks back about the movable planks. I wouldn't doubt if some teams roll the dice and say, okay, we know it's going to be a crazy wet race. We know we're going to have, full wets. Maybe we're going to move the plank down or whatever. And then you'd see a lot of planks hitting throughout the race, and they just take that risk. I don't know if that's what happened this time, but I thought it was worth mentioning out there. So why don't we use the full wet more often? Well, it's a really soft compound meant to heat up with a ton of standing water, right? So it's soft, it heats up fast, which means they're going to go through it quicker, especially if it starts to dry out. Like, you can't even have, like, a short section with no rain, because this tire will immediately chew itself to death. And when it becomes a slick, it's not a good slick. We talk about the red tire, the soft compound in qualifying, and how they only get one good lap on it. Imagine a tire that's even softer in race conditions with way more fuel. They will decimate a full wet if it gets dry out. So that's why the teams are like, this tire stinks. And you saw Lewis saying, like, hey, we need a better wet tire solution. He's kind of right. There's bigger challenges, though. It's not just the tire. Here's one of the solutions. This is from the race, one of my favorite sources for media coverage. They had, like, different versions of little, like, mud flaps and stuff. And there was a few different ways that they executed this. One was a full cover. You saw the Ferraris running that at their test track. And then there was another one like this where it was just like a half moon. And there were some that were just little winglets that kept the water down. The challenge here is that even if you keep the water from the tires on the track, that's only half the width of the car. The center width of the car, the floor is pulling water up off the track and causing spray because these are now downforce developing chassis as opposed to just wings. So you have this problem with the cars are just ripping up all this water up. That's why the racetracks dry out so fast, is because the cars are literally pulling the water up off the thing. And to highlight this, we've all seen these pictures before, but there's an entire field of cars behind these vehicles right here going out to turn one of some race at some point. You can't see them. They can't see down. It's unsafe. And that's why a lot of these red flags get thrown, because if the marshals can't see cars down track, then they can't flag properly. And if the cars can't see someone beached in the middle of a corner, they can't race safely. So there's that.
It was why we sorry to interrupt you, but it was why
ahead.
we saw the postponement of qualifying for the race until Sunday, because it was simply too dangerous. I loved that image that you just, like the second one that you showed, where it shows the plane of the car, yes, and like how much spray it will throw up based upon the aerodynamics. It also was a huge relevant point that like these cars, like with the floors, will lift all that water off, and they start to create their own racing line. And so like that's actually very conducive to keeping the race going and keeping the weekend alive, basically.
Yep.
I do think that it was the right move to postpone quali until Sunday. Like, we are big on safety. As much as we love seeing racing, I actually hate seeing crashes. I know a lot of casual fans will watch Formula One for the crashing. To me, it's anxiety inducing. I don't want to see F1 drivers crash. The G-forces they're doing and the sacrifices these guys are making for my entertainment. I don't want to watch that. I don't want to see, destruction in F1. And I don't think any of us do. I think we all want it to be the safest possible. And so I actually was happy that they postponed quali and called it and said like, hey, no, this isn't safe. I do think that comes with a lot of consideration when it comes to the amount of time that you have in a Formula One weekend. I don't want to deny anything that we discussed in Conspiracy Corner, but I do think that the time constraints play into these things and the decisions that are made. But please carry on with your tech talk. Thank you for letting me interject.
Hey, man, no worries. One last thing. I was trying to make a suggestion for how they could fix this. I don't really have a good one. And here's why. Usually when you go to a wet condition or a snow condition in rallying, you go to a smaller tire and you're like, oh yeah, we'll just pump less water and it'll provide less option for hydroplaning. The challenge there is that camber is set based on tire width. It's one of the biggest factors when setting camber, and they can't just go changing camber in the middle of the race. It wouldn't be even remotely quick nor accurate. And it's a major safety issue because when you have the camber wrong, tires tend to overheat and explode. And this is Red Bull got in trouble with this years ago, back in I want to say the Vettel era, where they were using pressures and camber ranges that were outside what Pirelli said was appropriate, and they eventually got dinged for it. So they can't just go to a narrower tire and be like, okay, cool, we're going to run narrow tires in the rain, because then the camber is going to be way off and you're going to boil the inside of the tread pattern of the tire. So anyway, that's it. I got no good solutions. We just can't run in really heavy downpours.
You really can't. And so that is, even when we looked at the tread pattern, it does as much as it can to keep the car on the track. But the secondary effect that it creates is this huge wave of water behind it that blinds the stewards and it blinds the other drivers behind it. And so, yeah, it's almost like a fog that's getting created of just moisture being thrown up. It's good though too, because you bring up the very specific point of the only logical solution would be thinner wheels and a different tread pattern and thinner tires. If you look at rally cars and you look at the solution for that, they're very thin studded tires that they run on snow and dirt, and the thinner the better. I had a Camaro with 325s on the rear, and in Miami, if I'm driving home and it's raining, it turns into an ice rink. In the dry, it's absolutely perfect, and I have great traction. But as soon as it starts raining, it's oh wow, this is unsafe.
Greg,
so
you saw when Lewis made the comment about, give us better wet tires or blankets, right?
Thank you. Yes. The temperature plays.
Speak to the blankets reference there as it relates to what he was trying to get across.
Yeah. So you start out on a cold track, cold morning, and they don't allow tire blankets or they don't allow the higher temperature blankets in F1 anymore. So the problem with that is, when Bottas was still at Mercedes-Benz, he highlighted this nicely. They were testing the idea, and he came out of the pits and spun the car in the pits. Like, he wasn't even like pulling out on the racetrack. Like, it went all the way around in the pits, and he was like, yeah, these are cold. So it's a very delicate balance. What they're trying to do is make bigger pit deltas. They're trying to force the drivers to be more careful when they come out of the pits so that people can actually gain and pass. So there's more opportunities for overcutting and undercutting. It's just another example of DRS or all these other things that we're doing to try and like spice up the racing, so that it's not just a freight train of whoever can pour the most money at the car and the development, or buy the most expensive driver. They're trying to make better racing, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you get into races like this where people are just bidding shit left and right, they're going to say, wait, was it really worth turning down the temperature on the blankets? Was it really worth some of these other things that we're doing? And maybe it isn't, because we've got drivers that could get hurt. We certainly have sponsors that are upset because their stuff's getting binned into the wall, which does provide a little bit of a marketing boost. Like, hey, look, there's another Williams in the wall. Go Duracell. The only part of the car that never gets wrecked. And so it's just it's one of them things. So, at least Lewis is going up to them and saying, hey, please change something, right? I don't know what they're going to do, quite frankly, because we can't change that much about the cars. We're not going to get away from ground effects cars, or at least most of the ground effect notion anytime soon.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Excellent work on Tech Talk, Greg. Thank you so much. Let's get on to a brand new segment that we're introducing. Thanks to you, Greg. We're doing ridiculous F1 news clickbait segment.
So let me get a little window up here. I would like all of you to describe what you think this article is about based on this title. Mercedes announced Hamilton release ahead of Brazilian GP. And the very first sentence here is a seven-time Formula 1 champion has only 4 Grand Prix remaining. Now, mind you, this is set in an environment where you saw K-Mag take a seat. You got a bunch of other drivers that are moving around. Lawson just came in for Ricciardo. So, like, there's an implied insinuation here. So what do y'all think this is about?
Well, the headline is saying that he's gotten ditched before the race, is what the headline says.
Okay, so that's what you got. Anybody else? Got anything else? Any other ideas?
So if I knew nothing about F1 or knew less than I do, I would say exactly what Fabian said. Like, it sounds like
he got
Mercedes is releasing Hamilton. Yeah, it sounds like they're firing Hamilton ahead of the Grand Prix. But knowing what I know and like knowing more, I know that that's not fucking true. That like if we scroll down, it's Hamilton's moving to Ferrari, which is factually correct.
Okay, but that's what you're going to go with. Cool.
I think that's what they're doing is they're dangling post news, old news, and trying to tie it into just like clickbait, basically. Yep. That's what I'm guessing.
I was on a similar notion, right? When I first saw this, I'm like, this is crap, but I knew I wanted an article for this segment, and I thought, what I think they're going to say is that they're going to allow him to do testing ahead of time, because that had been a topic I saw in some other media where they're not allowing him to go because he still has to do some Mercedes promo stuff after the season. So they're not going to let him test in the last race. So I thought, okay, this is a little clickbaity, but I get it, right? So anyway, Meg, what do you got?
I mean, I'm agreeing. It looks like he got sacked.
Okay. All right. Jay, what do you got?
That would be about the only thing I could take from it. Like, I really would love to say something different, but yeah.
No, that's fair. So we got like three different ideas. They're all basically around the same thing. This is actually about a release of like the promotional wear, like the jerseys and stuff. This is just about clothing.
Wait, what?
They released a clothing line.
Shut the fuck up.
That's it. Like, and this is GP fans. Most of their stuff is clickbait. So shame on them because this is dumb. This is like, have a style segment. I mean, it's Lewis, for heaven's sake. Like, that's what he does. Like, his thing is style. So like, just call it what it is. Don't give us
release
clickbait.
of like a Brazilian. Yeah. Okay.
I love that you have to
thing.
scroll all the way down to the bottom of the article in order to see the clothing
and
line.
Speak Portuguese to read that tweet.
Because look, even the second paragraph talks about the decline of Mercedes.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
And here, still nothing.
Third paragraph,
fake
nothing.
News. Fake news.
Nice pictures. A little bit of Ferrari. You see him. He's going to Ferrari, so they like to put that splash of red.
Here we go. We're down
for Brazil.
Way down here. Mercedes convert a special Hamilton release. Okay, now we're getting on to the crux of it. Like, what is it really? No, it's just clothing.
A t-shirt.
Yeah. Yep.
And a hat.
Yep. That's it.
I'll wait till next year when he's signed with Ferrari, so that it's not worthless.
Oh my gosh, they're gonna sell so much stuff. All right, so I encourage you all next week and in the weeks to come to find some ridiculous thing, and we'll all take shots at what we think it's about.
Do you have any great tidbits from your wife?
Okay, Do we have thoughts from Mrs. Gregg this week?
She actually just had
our other new recurring segment.
She just had a question, right? She was extremely tired. I was at working all weekend. I came home and I was like, I gotta watch the race. She's like, I'm never gonna make it. She's like, but I'll start watching. She watched. Well, when there was the Stroll delay, right? And then the race was gonna go, and she's like, I can't. She's like, I'm gonna fall right asleep. She's like, go to sleep. So the race starts, right? And Max starts weaving his way through the field, and she gets up to leave the room. She looks over her shoulder. She goes, texting me when he's in the lead. I'm betting it's lap 15. She goes up to bed, right?
Wow.
So it was lap 33, but she was right. Dude was coming through the field. So her intuition was correct, and she didn't need to see it, but
that's wild.
We 1000% need to address that. Max Verstappen came from 18th,
17th,
17th.
But it's a but it's teammate 13th to 11th.
So you're saying he improved?
So
to a non-points paying position.
Yeah, Checo. He scored a point this weekend. 1 point, or no, he scored. He was 8th in the sprint.
Was he? I thought he was 9th.
He loves 8th place. He was 8th. He freaking loves 8th place more than anything. I think that's been his most commonplace. I won't call it definitively, but
I actually
I'll make that we were right, we were wrong next week.
Out.
Eight equals infinity.
I thought Lewis.
That was beautiful.
I thought Lewis got
past
Sir
Gregory. No, well, I looked at stats before because I prepare for this. But I'm pretty sure he qualified 18th and finished first. And he shares that with only like 3 or 4 other drivers ever.
I'll tell you a record that he holds on his own, though. The most wins from different positions than any other driver now.
So he does. He has won from 10 different qualifying positions. One of them.
So he sucks at qualifying sometimes.
No, he just
a lot of them were from.
It just doesn't matter where he qualifies from. He's just gonna do it.
Yeah, yours is better, but mine was funnier.
Does Lando hold the record for most pole
position
Charles. Losses?
Probably.
That's still Charles.
That's still Charles.
Is it? It's still Charles.
He'll get there.
Really?
Don't worry. He'll break that record.
Hold on here. I got a question for you, Meg, since you're our resident McLaren fan. Everybody talks about Lando's rituals before the race. Is one of his rituals automatically bottling on the first lap if he has pole?
I think he visualizes it before every race. He's just like, okay, turn 1, slow down.
I think his man crush on Max is getting in the way. He just sees him put it on the inside.
No. Because Max wasn't even in his rear view mirror.
He knew he was there in his head.
No, you know what I think it was? Because Max wasn't in his rear view mirror, he was just like looking extra hard. Like, George,
where
please,
is he?
Move out of the way. Go around.
I think it's well established that like he is way too inside of his head when it comes to like that first lap. And we've talked about it several times.
I don't think he's ready for the car.
Like he bucked it once, and I thought, like, okay, man, like you do it once, you proved it to yourself. You can do this. You can hold on to P1 after the first lap, but like I still think like this is going to be the monkey on his back for the rest of his career. He just
I don't think it's going to be the rest of his career.
He gets
but
too inside his head.
The rest of this year. But honestly, the more I think about it, I don't think he's ready for the car.
I don't necessarily know if he's not ready.
That's an interesting point. Actually.
Because no, if you think about it, right? The car really started performing like and improving rapidly after Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And the car just kept getting better and better. And with that added pressure of it getting better and better. I mean, it's one of the best cars on the grid. He now has the responsibility to bring the mentality to match the car. And he's not.
Jay called that, I think, on the fourth or sixth race of the season, that Red Bull was no longer the number one car on the grid and that it was McLaren. And that was very early on.
I said Ferrari, and that was second race.
Oh, Ferrari, second race. But then you said McLaren at the, I think, sixth or seventh race into the season.
What was the race
like,
after
McLaren...
Miami?
Imola?
I don't think it was Imola. I want to say it might have been Hungary or...
No, Hungary was after
Monaco.
Imola.
No, it wasn't Monaco.
So, in essence, what you...
But after he won in Miami... that was when you actually said it was, which I believe
it was oh no, sorry, it was Amelia. Yeah, it was
okay. I think Miami was the seventh or eighth race of the season, but Jay called it like quite early. I'm trying to give props, and we were right, because he was like, no, now McLaren is the fastest on the grid. Like
Freddie over here.
You're gonna see that play out through the rest of the season, and like Red Bull's not gonna win the constructors. And he made that prediction quite early in the year. So props for we were right. All right, everybody. So,
I got a question for you guys though.
Go.
So we're talking about Lando's maturity here. The fact that man could not...
He doesn't have a frontal lobe yet.
We will now.
He's over 25.
No, I think he's 20. No, he's 24, and men don't develop it until they're at least 28.
Either way,
we also found out that maybe not until you're in your mid 30s if you are on the spectrum
ADHD.
or ADHD. So
there's hope for you yet, Rich.
For a while.
It made a lot more sense.
Is this an F1 podcast?
No.
Anyways, we're not getting into mental health issues right now. Lando's comment about it's not luck.
It's not talent. It's luck.
Yeah. I was like, bro, Max is going to fuck you up.
Not only that, honestly, if you really want to look at it, it was straight up luck why he won Miami with the timing of that safety car.
With Max getting fucking going over the bollard and ruining his whole floor. Yeah, that too.
No, he did that on purpose, remember? He didn't like its positioning.
No, he was bored, I thought.
No, he was bored in Monaco. He didn't like the position of the bollard in Miami.
Thank you. But I have to love Max's clapback at fucking Lando at the end of the race.
Simply lovely.
Like, he made sure.
He did it in a British accent, too.
Uh-huh. He made sure that he knew exactly who it was fucking directed at, and they knew it as well. Hence adding more.
I will say, I actually really enjoyed Max's win today, too, because not today, but yesterday, because you could actually hear emotion again. Like, for the longest time, it was just like, oh, yeah, okay. I'm going to go back to the sim racing now. Like, this is...
I think they told him, I don't think he's really been doing too much of it like he was either.
No, because they put parameters on him.
Yeah. I'm saying even during the breaks, because that's why he went to Minecraft.
I'm glad we're applauding the murmurings of a petulant child over the radio. That's great.
Wait,
so
hold on.
That's what we expect from a world championship driver, because that's also our topic.
There's no frontal lobe.
Okay, so for starters, Lando started this shit in Max's home race. in Max's home race with saying the simply lovely. Max had been saying that since what, the beginning of 23, late 22, whenever he would win a race. Lando saying that shit, that is more just the psychological game that Max has literally been playing with Lando.
But I will say, in Lando's side of it, he's going for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, fair. But
like Max's digs at him are very well placed and seem offhand. So they get deeper into the psyche. Do you guys think that these dudes where don't Lando's is just kind of like it's just the easy dig.
Do you think these guys aren't going to talk to each other afterwards? You know what I mean?
They're
like, how close do you think their friendship is? So that's what I'm saying.
No, but what I'm saying
when he comes over the radio,
the jabs that they're the jabs.
You're doing it again, Rich.
The jabs that Lando takes at Max, they're the easy digs. They're not really going to fuck with Max's head. They're just like, yeah, fuck you. Whereas Max is like planting the seeds to grow to really get inside his head.
Yep. Max is playing fucking chess. Lando's playing fucking tic-tac-toe.
Chinese checkers?
No, tic-tac-toe. We'll go with that.
Okay.
I think they're both chuckling about it afterwards.
Yeah,
because they're getting rich.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And guaranteed they're chuckling about it.
Two of the number one drivers in the world. And
they're literally on the same.
Their friendship exists beyond this drama and beyond this F1 shit. Exactly.
That's only because Penelope will whoop both their asses if they don't act right.
I'm still stuck on.
I don't think either one of them gets shit faced. Actually, I think they're too disappointed. I think they might have.
Penelope was going to whoop their asses. Oh,
I did. No, I say they get shit faced because you've seen videos of them on the plane together.
Yeah, maybe they have a few G&Ts, you know, but I do think that they like to play the shit up in the media.
Yeah, because they're
final question, and we'll go around on this before we wrap. Are we going to see DR3 again, or are all my hopes and dreams gone?
Done.
I want fucking DR3 back. I think with the Checo performance after this weekend.
What do you mean after this weekend? It would even be last. It's just the consistent Checo.
I mean, after this weekend, the weekend after the Mexican, the weekend after the Mexican GP, right, where he struggled and failed to perform again, and after the disastrous home GP, where everybody's speculation, including ours, was like that was going to be the end of him, and that like the decision may be made for him. It's not necessarily up to him if he's going to retire. My question is, because of his struggles, can we see DR3 again? Can we? Please?
I would love to.
And hold on here. For the reason being, Daniel Ricciardo, based on the rules, cannot step back into the V-carb car because he would be classified as a new driver because they did drop him. So therefore, you run into the same thing that happened with Liam Lawson and Nick DeVries last year. So what happens is whenever you're only allotted to have so many people in the car every year, they cannot risk a wreck, especially in as tight of a race as they are in for constructors right now, that the reserve driver gets hurt, or not the reserve driver, one of the main drivers gets hurt, and they can't bring in a reserve driver for that person because they've already brought in Ricciardo into the seat. So they literally can't move Lawson or Yuki up to Red Bull. The only place for DR3 to go is into the Red Bull seat at this point. Now, Red Bull, if they're smart, because they realistically, Daniel Ricciardo did not have nearly as bad of a season as Checo. Or a career as bad as Checo's at this point, I feel like. But he was a fan favorite. You did not give him a proper send-off. Everybody is giving you endless streams of shit. Checo got the race his home race. Fucking has been given chance after chance after chance. This is Red Bull's chance to actually bring DR3 in, test out to see if he can actually do something with that RB20. And if he can, Red Bull settles their whole fucking lineup problem. If he can't, that is 2 drivers gone, 2 seats open. Let's fucking go. You've got Lawson in 1, Colapinto or Sainz, whatever that fucking whole catastrophe is with the Williams hospitality room. And there you go. There's your lineups for next year. Red Bull's problems are solved. They give DR3 the send-off he deserves. End of the day. End of story.
Man, thank you. The send-off that he deserves is the crux of my angst and dissatisfaction with that team, that organization, and the way that they handle that. To somebody that, like, he came back to you hat in hand. He came back to you trying his best. He came back to the second team, you know, as the number 1 driver for other teams. You know, struggles or not, but like, he did what he could have done for that corporation as an athlete and that team. And he deserves a far more respectful send off and end to his career. And that's what bothers me the most. And maybe that's the sentimentality and just emotions getting the better of me and not understanding the business side of things. However, like, come on, you're a public facing organization. Public opinion and fandom is what you tread upon and where you make your money. So you better not send out one of the most loved fans in Formula One, like one of the most loved drivers.
He's like the most from a business standpoint, he is one of the most marketable drivers on the grid.
Yeah. He deserved a better standoff. I wanted to see him do donuts.
He deserved to race Austin.
You know? Yeah. Do donuts.
Okay,
Give him one more. You know, at least his final one. You know, the
he
NFL
did deserve to race Austin.
So they'll sign a former player and let him retire from his home team.
Well,
you know, like,
and like don't drop it without like a proper announcement. Like if they were gonna drop him, they should have announced that Austin was gonna be his last race, so that every single person from like all of the teams and all of the fans could have that proper send off.
Yes.
And like really hype it up and actually let a shit ton more shenanigans happen in Austin than just the donuts.
I was tracking that through Kim Illman the entire time, the F1 photographer who's from there, who's a friend of Ricardo's and went to high school with him. He had the pulse of that situation the entire time. And it was really, it's very interesting if you go back and look at the day after post that he did. It's a short video segment that he does where he describes DR3 leaving that circuit that night, being basically the last person from any team to leave, and the look over his shoulder at the venue, and it's compelling stuff. And I think that's where all my rage at that time was really coming from, because I was pissed about that. I planted that. Look, Horner is so much the tip of that spear that I plant that all on his shoulders. Like, I really do. You know, I mean, Helmut's a big mouthpiece and he talks a lot of shit, but Horner's the one that's really got, you know, the marionette strings there. And I just don't, it just doesn't make any sense. It's disrespectful, you know?
Thank you. That's what I was just about to say, is that it's disrespectful to somebody, you know, who as an athlete and a driver, like, try to do the right thing for you and try to come back and was, you know, yeah, okay, you guys left on bad terms, but like, he came back to the Red Bull family to be treated like family, and you treated him like nothing at the end of that. Like, if that was the end of his career and the end of his race, I think all of us as fans of him have every right to feel disrespected and like disregarded on his behalf. Because that's not how you treat something.
Well, and to add insult to injury, you're putting all of your, like, you're putting all the eggs in a basket that is literally has no bottom. It's just falling fucking through with Checo.
Yeah. I mean,
they're like, you're not performing, but then you've got Checo crashing all the time. And then
just
somehow manages to get worse and worse and worse with each race.
No. Mr. 8th place stayed pretty consistent.
Oh, I'm sorry. He came in eighth place
place
yesterday. How long did it take him to finally get back into the points?
He came in 8th place more than any other place that he's.
I'm talking since they got rid of Danny Rick to now.
So since I think the 7th or 8th race, Checo consistently finishes and qualifies in 8th place. 8th place is Checo's new name.
Jay says no.
Shake your fucking head, but like
not for qualifying. You're out of your fucking mind.
So mad. So mad. It's hot right now.
Finishes in 8th place. He scores 8 points.
Or SQ2 almost every fucking time this
Way
year.
too many. All right, so disregard the qualifying comment. He finishes the race in 8th place more than any other place that he has this year.
Okay, but to take, we're gonna hold on. But to if you want to talk about from a money standpoint, though, is Checo losing them more money with his crashes than he's gaining with the points?
I think we identified that he's one of the worst.
So
didn't we run it down?
But
didn't we talk about the money?
No. You sack one of the most marketable drivers on the grid and back a driver who's costing you more money with his crashes. Just from a business standpoint, that is idiocracy.
Yeah.
So,
Rich, I agree with you.
You're wrong, actually.
No. What's his most common?
7th is actually his most common place, along with DNF.
I love
rank on
that
finish
you
line is
took
8th
the
place.
time. I love that you took the time right now.
All right, no.
To do the research to point that out.
No, actually, it's right on the F1 site. You can see all the results and everything. It's actually really cool. But he's DNF'd almost as many times.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rank on finish line average is 8th.
I can do that too if you really want me to.
Rank on finish line
because you
average 8th.
I want to see what it is since
rank on starting grid is 9.94. Rank on finish line average is 8th. This is F1stats.com.
And is that just this year
F1.
or is that overall?
It's his entire career.
I don't give a fuck.
Average rank on finish line is 8th.
So, regardless, I thought we were just talking about this year. I apologize, Rich.
Even if you do, you can look right here and it says 8.
That's his position in the constructor or in the drivers' championship, numbnuts.
His average rank on finish line is 8. That's throughout his career.
So
on both counts.
That's rank on finish line for career. I'm talking about just
8.
This year.
Average rank 8.
Okay. Obviously, you're not hearing what I'm saying, so we'll let you go, or we'll let you win. It's fine.
Moving on.
Checo's an 8th place driver. That's all I'm going to say. I'll leave it there. I won't argue with you anymore. Checo is an 8th place driver.
So 7.55 points is what he's averaging this year.
I thought we were moving on.
No. This is something completely different now. This is something completely different right now. This is something completely different now, Greg. I promise.
I don't have to be right. I don't need to be right. I like to be right.
Anyways, shut the fuck up. 7.55 points is his average for this year. His crash totals was what? 4.8, I said? Yeah. So his value is not there whatsoever. No matter
fully
how
concur
much
with
money,
you on that. Yeah.
No matter how much money he brings in, and Meg, I know where you were going with the DR3 being very marketable. Checo is actually more marketable with as far as sponsorship money is concerned.
Really?
Because of who his backers are. He is 56% of Red Bull's total merchandising. He has Telcom, which is what, Carlos Slim, I think is the dude's name, that produces $34 million. His Facebook revenue is $30 million. The dude brings in fucking money. The problem is, though, is that the money he is bringing in,
like the overall ratio,
does not take away from the cost cap damage that he is causing. Because you have to factor in how much time it's taking them to rebuild these cars. You have to factor in how much money is actually being damaged, how much those new parts are, because most of the time, whenever he bins it, is the upgraded parts. So you have
what I
all
would
the
love
R&D.
to see, which it's not going to be me because I do not have the patience to do this, but I would love to see somebody break down how much money is put into an F1 driver across like all aspects of their career, like transporting them, training them, outfitting them, all that shit versus all of the car. So how much money they have to put into the driver versus how much money they actually get in returns for revenue.
So if you look at it, and this is why the cost cap that Greg mentioned is going on now, is you have teams that are brands, like hardcore brands. If there wasn't a cost cap, VCarb would probably be outdeveloped through the fucking nose right now, just because of who their sponsors are with Visa and Cash App. You would have them probably go from like last to first. But you have Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren's not even in this conversation because they really don't make enough to do anything. But those three brands on their own could support an F1 team easily. Even with like just cost cap at 150 million. Those three could cover it. No prize money, no nothing else. But whenever you take off that lid is whenever they can really start overly developing. So, yes, I know, Greg, McLaren does sell street cars, but so does Ferrari. And so does Mercedes. So you would still have all the cost cap issues and everything like that. And that's where the problem is with Checo. No matter how much money he is bringing into the Red Bull racing, his cost cap is affecting Red Bull so much more. Because 1/10 of their budget, I guarantee, has went to fixing his car, transporting new fucking parts to it, rebuilding his car, replacing his chassis, and everything else that is caused. So you can't really even do it anymore. Like, it's not feasible. And I think that's why Red Bull's starting to get pissed off. Because Greg and Fabian, I think you both can back me on this. 10 to 15 million in fucking development would be huge, absolutely ginormous, like ridiculous amounts. Because I mean, hell, whenever it was 300,000 was the cost cap breach for 21, Fabian. I figure you would know this one. You're muted.
I don't remember what it was in 21. The breach.
I want to say it was
400.
It was 300 to 400,000.
I think it was 400,000.
Expensive catering.
Very expensive.
Yeah, it was 400,000.
It's very expensive.
That
catering.
right there.
Yeah.
That right there, Meg.
Just a simple oversight, according to Christian Horner.
In the grand scheme of things, against 155 million, I think is what the cost cap was at that point.
It is kind nearly of half a mil. Half a mil, like it's almost 10%.
No, it's not. If the cost cap was 155 million.
Oh, 155. I thought you said 5.5. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's like a percent of it. Yes, you can
it's a lot of parts.
Yeah.
It's a lot of parts. Like you could bin a lot of wings and suspension arms and stuff, and that $500,000 would go, but that's already developed parts, right? So it doesn't affect the did they develop more? Maybe not, but they could have spent.
Oh no, they could have probably developed a wing off of 400,000. I would put money on it. They probably could have developed a wing for that. So there's that. But at $10 million is, I think, a safe estimate versus 151 points total. Whenever your other driver is almost at 400 right now, I think, or did he pass 400? No, he's almost at 400. So you've got somebody that by the end of the season could be tripling Checo's points total, and arguably could have probably no. He would have come third, he would have come fourth third. I'm right. He would have come third by himself in the Constructors' Championship. Last year, he literally won the Constructors' Championship by himself. You have to get another driver in, and I would bring DR3 in just to shut everybody up at this point. Literally, I said it after Silverstone, maybe, Rich, where I said, drop Serge or put Checo into V-Carb, bring Ricardo up. If he doesn't work out, you get to drop 2 drivers. You have 2 seats open. And nobody can say a fucking word because, yeah.
Yep, it was. And it was like, because this was when the debate started happening. The real debate started happening after Monaco and after he had that crash with both Haas. And it was like, oh, wow. Like, we're really starting to doubt his capability as a driver, his mindset, and where it is. He started the season strong. Like, the first 5-6 races, I want to say, he was podiuming and driving the hell out of the car. The car performance dropped off. McLaren started to really surge forward. Ferrari really started surging forward as well, and was honestly the only ones actually challenged them. But when McLaren started coming out around the Miami timeframe, that's where we started seeing like all the confidence it felt like with Checo. But I really feel in sustain that it happened after Monaco, and there was fear that was put into him and doubt into the back of his mind of like, hey, do I still have this? Because that car came unglued. And then you started hearing him in the interviews talking about his children. And, I'm gonna keep racing because I don't want to set this bad example for my kids. But it's like, all right, your mind's on your kids. You're one of 3 fathers that are professional drivers on the grid. It's not hard to think that like that's in the back of his mind every single time he lines up.
Well, and didn't his dad also had a heart attack too, right?
Whenever he pinned in the wall at Baku, he actually had the heart attack. Right?
Yeah, he had the heart attack at the thing. So like he's thinking about his family on all sides.
I think that. So as well. His dad literally announced his retirement last weekend. Oh, yeah. Literally announced his fucking retirement.
I think this will be the last. I do think this is the last season for him. I do think that he wants to finish out this season, but I don't believe that that's necessarily his choice. He may want to as much as he possibly can, but Red Bull, justifiably so, unless they're trying to tank and get more money for wind tunnel testing for 26, season, the way we've speculated in the past. I don't understand why they would keep him on anymore. And I really do feel like strongly that the disrespect towards DR3 is one of the reasons why we might see him again, because like that doesn't sit right and sit well with anyone that is a fan of them. And he is like one of the faces of Formula One. So for him to go out that way, was disrespectful to him, disrespectful to the fans, and just not the way that we needed it. I think we're coming up close in wrapping, guys. We'll have plenty to talk about next week. We'll start prepping for Vegas, and we may take 1 week off prior to Vegas, but otherwise we will have plenty to talk about the Vegas GP. Actually, tickets are getting slashed for the Vegas GP. So if anybody's interested in going, tickets are dropping quite quickly. I might actually end up going instead of getting a hotel room and watching. But looking forward to discussing more about you guys next week and like talking about Vegas and getting ready and seeing where the rest of the season is going to go. We've got 3 races left?
3 in the sprint.
Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi.
Let's do it. Let's close out the season strong and delve into the new year. We just hit 38,000 fans this weekend, and we're creeping up closer to 40. Hopefully, we will hit 50 by the end of the year, and that would be amazing and in a really perennial mark for our very first year. But thank you to everybody for the support. Thank you to all of you guys for being hosts and making yourselves available and giving us time. We're going to go ahead and wrap. This has been episode number 13. Thanks, everybody.
Peace out.